So it is 2025, and this year we have to get our finances together with the new president and the new administration coming in and everything that they plan to implement as far as policies and stuff. That is going to hurt our bag. And so, with me today to talk about how we can protect the bag is Lea Landaverde, founder and jefa of RQZA.
Well, thank you so much, Violeta, for having me. I'm excited to have some money chisme conversations. 2025 is going to be a year of uncertainty. A lot of things are up in the air. So it's time that we have this conversation.
Think it's important to understand the mentality that resulted in, Trump getting reelected before we get into, how we can protect ourselves in 2025, because we have to figure out where our mindset
Right,
was in order to move
right,
forward. And one
right.
of the reasons was, the economy that people, saying they were paying higher taxes and the egg prices. That's all you heard and everything.
Right.
So I wanted to just get your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think in 2024, with all the campaigns that were ran from both parties, um, there was one misinformation pushed to a demographic that specifically doesn't have a lot of knowledge on economics. So, for example, specifically like speaking on the Latina community, right?
Mhm,
A lot of campaigns and a lot of issues that were brought up was the economy. Oh, the economy, this, the economy, that, egg prices, inflation. But when we even really dive into inflation in 2024, inflation was around like 2.4 to 2.6%. So financially speaking, inflation is usually supposed to be around 1 to 2%. High is a 3%. But what we saw was post-pandemic, we had 7 to 8, even I think it almost reached 9% in inflation because of obviously supply chain issues. We obviously
mhm,
had a lot of individuals not working anymore. So there was a lot going on during the pandemic, and all of that has an aftermath effect. Like it's not immediate sometimes, and it
mhm,
usually takes like 2 to 3 years post, whatever recession for us
mhm,
to really see what happened. And so en nuestra comunidad nos preocupamos mucho por el dinero, yes, because obviously we are a community that a lot of the time live paycheck to paycheck. We love to make
mhm,
sure that we know where our dollar is going sometimes, especially when it comes to food, housing. Those are the things that we're paying the most attention to, right? And so end result, no matter who the president is, we're going to blame the president for inflation, for
mhm,
cost of goods being high, cost of rent. When in reality, a lot of the time, a lot of like the policies that get put into effect don't really make an impact until the next president. Right. And a lot of
mhm,
people don't know that. So, for example, like tax policies, people are like, oh, I'm paying higher taxes. Well, the tax policies that we're following are actually Trump's policies back when he was president. So we're
mhm,
still under his policies, and actually, they're supposed to be renewed in 2025. And so
mhm,
now that he's being reelected, his goal is to a reestablish those policies. And he has no plans, and based on what he stated online, and to others, it's still the plan to keep it the same. So when people blame the current president for these issues, it's like, are you really understanding where the source is coming from? Like policies
mhm.
don't go into effect así inmediatamente. Todo
Yeah.
toma tiempo. And I think that's the problem that we saw this year in 2024 of the lack of understanding of economics, of the
Mhm.
lack of understanding how inflation, how costs of, housing and goods go and change because we don't know a lot about this stuff. No, nadie nos enseña. It's not like Primer Impacto is going
Mhm.
on here explaining qué es inflation,
Yeah.
right? They're talking more about what's going on with, eh, all the celebrities in Latino America, ¿verdad? Or even
Mhm.
what's happening in the United States. They're not talking about what's happening from a business economic perspective here. And so
Mhm.
I pinpoint this specifically because media is what construed our perspective 100% during the elections because we had this noise, I would like to say, coming from
Mm-hmm.
one side that our economy's bad, we need to fix our economy, wages are still too low, taxes are high, la di da di da, cuando en
Mm-hmm.
realidad la persona que puso todo eso is the one who's trying to win, right?
Yeah.
The election. And so a lot of our community, because it was presented in the data post elections, really voted for Trump for that reason, for
Mm-hmm.
economic purposes. Pero ya de allí, cuando uno habla de tariffs y todo eso, they have like no idea what a tariff is.
Yeah, yeah, they really played on because our community we deal with a lot of financial anxiety, so they really played on that of oh everything's going to the economy and blah blah blah. So like we're already prone to that anxiety, luego just to feed into it more. Plus, it's something that's really hard to overcome, even when you're trying to overcome it, like starting to heal and everything like that. So.
Right.
And one thing that you pointed out of how things take time, which is why it's so important that we'll get into a little bit later, was the importance of why we want to take action in 2025 because things take time. And so you want to have 2025 to plan because the policies, como dijiste, are going to take a few years to hit. So you want to be prepared for when that hit takes. We are kind of that bridge of learning how the economy works. And so with that knowledge, I feel like, I don't know if you felt that way because like you're trying to convince your parents or, the older generation, the generation prior of how the economy works, and then you're trying to set up
Mm,
the future generations. So it's a little frustrating for us when we know all of these things and we're becoming educated, which is, being learning how to be knowledgeable and being in the know. So I kind of want to get your thoughts on building that knowledge, especially
yeah.
um como te digo, like I kind of realized with the results and the mentality, and I guess I don't know if you had similar conversations with your family members or friends that they're so just work, 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 but they don't take the time to learn like finances. So I just wanted to get your thoughts or tips on somebody for someone like that.
Yeah. When I even think about my own family during the
Mm-hmm.
elections, I was like, Dad, Papi, Mommy, like this is not how we have these conversations. Like, how can you consider this person as a president when they're
Mm-hmm.
talking about our community in such a horrible light, but yet y'all believe in this because he's good with money or he
Mm-hmm.
has proposed better economic changes to our economy. But do you really understand our economy? You know?
Mm-hmm.
Or they'll go back and they're like, oh, well, we had COVID relief and we didn't really have to pay that back. And that helped us so much. Okay. Pero cualquier presidente during a pandemic would have proposed a COVID relief, not, you
Mm-hmm.
know, just this person, right? So there's a lot of like misconception, right? And I think our community, at least when I look at my parents, they look at who really has helped me financially from a business
Mm-hmm.
perspective. My parents are entrepreneurs, but as well
Mm-hmm.
as it's this white gaze, right? That they have like, oh my God, this president has been this in this industry for so long, and he's a businessman, he knows what he's doing, when you compare this to a black woman, oh well, ella dice todas estas cosas, but I don't think it's true. What has she done in her term as vice president?
Mm-hmm.
Blah 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 blah. And I'm like, papi, like educate por un ratito, please. Like like this man has filed bankruptcy multiple times. And like that is not a sign of success. Let me just say that. That's a
Mm-hmm.
sign of cheating the
Mm-hmm.
system and getting out of the mess that you made. But okay, si tú crees eso, by all means. And so for me as being part of the sandwich generation and like, having all this knowledge and finance, um, I try to do my very best to educate and like prove my point and be like, okay, well, even if you don't believe me, at least do this, this, and this. At least set up your
Mm-hmm.
high yield savings. At least prepare your estate plan. At least you do like, these certain steps. And I'm actually post the new year, I'm going to um, go visit my parents to start setting up their estate because as long as like whoever is president, they're getting closer to retirement. And I need
Mm-hmm.
to make sure that my parents have some sort of plan in place if
Mm-hmm.
they decide to move to a different state to retire, or if they decide to go back to Salvador to retire.
Mm-hmm.
These are things and questions that I need answers to ensure that they have some sort of plan in place. And we can talk about that just in general here in a minute. But
Mm-hmm.
like, when we think about our parents and like even just like the culture, we're so gullible to believe, but the messaging is really what proved its point in
Mm-hmm.
2024 with the elections of like it doesn't matter who you are as long as you have good messaging and you tie to the needs of the community, of the concerns, they are going to listen. Because when we look on
Yeah.
the other side, if we look at Kamala's campaign, did she really tie her messaging to the Latino community and to her Latino
Mm-hmm.
concerns? No, she didn't really bring up economics. She really didn't bring up those concerns. She brought more of like, okay, well, I plan on giving those who want to buy their first home, a down payment assistance, or
Mm-hmm.
I want to ensure that we have those who have kids get more for their tax refund, right? A credit for their children and all these things, right? And so that was what we saw post election, that the
Mm-hmm.
messaging was not on par,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
For at least even the men, because we saw Latino men vote the other, like vote for
Mm-hmm.
Trump. We saw even Latinas vote for Trump. And a lot of the time, like I said, it was either based on religion beliefs or economic beliefs. So
Yeah.
these are some things that I noticed that I'm like, okay, what's the key issue here? Lack of education. Because
Mm-hmm.
when I would make videos saying, guys, he is proposing to deport our people, like, how can you support this? Well, they're only going to deport people who have a bad, criminal history. They're
Mm-hmm.
only going to deport this. Trump is going to save us. Trump is going to fix DACA. Trump is going to do la, 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 la. And I'm literally here like, edúcanse, por favor. Abren un libro, por favor.
I've
Like,
never felt so frustrated after post all this stuff. I was like, I don't understand. Like, but I think one of um the things we're kind of fighting against is that you kind of mentioned it earlier about how our communities are usually living paycheck to paycheck. So now that I'm financially stable and everything like that, I have a little bit leeway to be able to actually like step out and be like, oh my God, look what's happening in the world.
pay
And
attention. Yeah.
and then I was like, how do you not see this? And then it didn't dawn on me. It's porque pues they're, not financially
They're so
stable yet.
centered, like they're so
Yeah.
centered and close-minded to, hay comida en la casa, cuánto nos está
Mm-hmm.
costando los huevos, cuánto nos cobran de la renta de la casa, or how much are we paying on interest on this mortgage, right?
Yeah.
And those are the concerns of our people. That's the truth.
Mm-hmm.
Regardless of religion, regardless of anything, like regardless, they are concerned about how their dollar is being impacted.
But now I want to get into what now? Like, what do we do now in 2025 to ensure that we survive Trump's presidency and whatever impact in the future after he's gone? Um, make sure that we
Yeah.
are financially good.
Yeah, so for 2025, one of my main focuses is making sure that we have some level of financial protection. And I create like post-election, a lot of people that followed me were reaching out to me saying, Lea, ¿qué hago? ¿Qué hago con mis finanzas? Ahora estoy preocupada. I'm
Mm-hmm.
gonna leave. Quiero irme de aquí. I don't want to be under a president that doesn't, want to help my people or women or queer women. And so there's a lot of
Mm-hmm.
things, right, that like spooked us up. Even me, like my wife and I were ready to like pack our stuff and move to a different state that was a blue
Yo
state,
también. I
like
was like
so fast.
taking
I
the
was like,
deuces.
let's go. And I really had to sit there and be like, Leah, okay, don't do anything irrational right now. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
You don't even got moving money right now because moving is expensive. Okay. You don't even want to stress
Yeah.
yourself out with this. So and what I did is I sat down and I kind of broke it down into 25 steps of things that we have to do as adults to protect our finances, especially if we have parents to worry about or
Mm-hmm.
children to worry about, or even just like a family if you're married and you're growing your wealth, or even if you're a single individual and you have some assets. These are things that we
Mm-hmm.
have to start protecting. And the beautiful thing about being Latina is that somos de aquí y somos de allá. So a lot of
Mhm.
us have this escape, this scapegoat of going back to our country and getting dual citizenship. So the
Yeah.
first concern was like, okay, where do I go? And I was like, okay, well, consider dual citizenship because first of all, if you're first gen and potentially second gen, you have the option of getting a second citizenship from the país of where your parents are from, right?
Mhm.
So a lot of people right now are working on their Mexican citizenship. I'm actually in the process of working on my Salvadoran citizenship when I go to
Mhm.
Utah to visit my family. That's going to be my main focus is que mis papis me sienten en la embajada de Salvador. And that's the first
Mhm.
step that your parents have to bring their birth certificate. You bring your birth certificate
Mhm.
and they sit you down in the country as like a Salvadoran citizen. And that's step
Yeah.
one. And then you go through the next step. So I told people start there with your citizenship. Right. That's one
Mhm.
place. But when we talk about money now, because first of all, people are like, I need a scapegoat. Well, that's one. Second of all, your finances are going to be the thing that's going to help you with your scapegoat or
Mhm.
leaving the US. And so I said, I divided it into like minding the bag. So your money mindset,
Mhm.
working the bag. So how you manage your money, securing the bag, like with credit, because credit is what gives us better opportunities. Good credit can get us better loans, better interest rates.
Mhm. Mhm.
Um, and then growing the bag through investing in different types of investing and then grow the bag or not grow the bag protect the bag
Mhm.
through estate planning and legal documents that we have to set in place. And a
Mhm.
lot of this is about financial planning fundamentals.
Mhm.
It's what most financial planners offer their employees or financial plan sorry financial planners offer their clients. And so
Mhm.
that being said, I was like, okay, let me take my principles from financial planning and let's make it a little bit simple that someone can self-serve and do this for themselves. And so the first thing is the mindset part, right? Because right now we're all in scarcity mode and we're like, okay, ¿qué
Mhm.
hacemos? Estoy espantada. I don't know what to do. But first of all, we need to know, okay, what's our financial triggers right now? Like, why are we feeling so anxious? And what is like where do we want to go with our money in the first place, because money needs a purpose. Money is not something that we use just to spend for happiness and joy. Like yes, that's part of it, but it's something that fulfills a need or a um goal, right, of buying a
Mhm.
home, moving out of the country, right, retirement. So there's bigger things that money does for us, right? Eventually it is to spend money, but it's a tool for us to protect ourselves in some way, shape, or form. So, what is
Yeah.
that level of future that you want to have for yourself? Like, where do you want to go with your life? And that's step one to discover, right? So, if you're thinking about 2025 with all this uncertainty, because we haven't even talked about Trump's staff selections, okay?
Oh my
How does,
God. I had
like,
to
and
just
that's
not
an,
even look at TikTok after a
right,
while because
right.
I was
Like, we
like,
can't
how's
even
que
go
la
there
que?
because it's a lot. It's a lot to really process that, like,
Yeah.
people, like Elon Musk now has all this power in government, and we're just like,
Yeah,
what
they're
the
calling
heck,
him
right?
the president and Trump vice president.
Right. No. And that's the scary
It's
part. So, like,
true.
with all this uncertainty, we have to first mind our bag, first focus on our own
Mm-hmm.
personal economy and understand,
Mm-hmm.
okay, where's my money mindset at and where do I want to go? Because if I'm concerned, what is my future going to look like? What is my next alternative, right? So, whether it's moving
Mm-hmm.
to a blue state, moving out of the country, you have to envision what that's going to look like and what are you like the financial obstacles that you're going through now. So, listing those out. So, in the first part of the guide, it's like more understanding like who you are, what your like money mindset is, what are your thoughts of scarcity, like what are your limiting beliefs? Because most of the time, regardless of what's happening in the economy,
Mm-hmm.
our relationship with money, a lot of the times we have this money mindset that we have to work through first. Because if we don't work through this mindset, at the end of the day, we could have a lot of money and still overspend. Or we could have literally, like, I know people who have little funds of 30 to 40K in salary, but they're really good savers, they're really good, like, with their money. And so it's all
Mm-hmm.
about the mindset. Then when I was thinking about the next process is working the bag, which is the money management part. How are we spending our money and does it align with our values? Especially now more than ever when we are in a place of understanding that CEOs are now stating who they supported, where their dollars went. We have to be
Mm-hmm.
more mindful with where our dollar goes. And so I
Mm-hmm.
I put in the guide like support your local economy, support your small businesses, support your friends and family who have businesses, because then your money starts revolving into a circular economy with
Mm-hmm.
close, friends, family, Latina business owners, and everything like that, instead of
Mm-hmm.
supporting our traditional, Amazon corporations where we know that they donated millions to a cause
Oh
that
my
does not
God.
align with us, right? And so, first of all, people were like, wow, I didn't even realize that these companies support this, this, and this. And I'm like, yes, do your research because where your money goes matters. And then the third thing is, okay, security is through, first of all, an emergency fund. We don't play with emergency funds because that is our first level of financial security. We have 3 to 6 months of savings to protect us from any job loss, cut hours, anything along those lines. That's where an emergency fund comes in. And I know
Mm-hmm.
for a fact, a lot of our people no tienen emergency funds, usan sus
Mm-hmm.
tarjetas de crédito. En final terminan endeudados, no sabiendo cómo
Mm-hmm.
salirse de la deuda, and they still have emergencies or expenses to
Yeah.
cover. And so when I see that, I'm like, yes, saving $6,000, $3,000 is a lot, but start with your first $500. Like start saving for something because even if a tire pops, let's just say the minor inconvenience of a tire popping, you have some level of money to protect that. See, like emergency funds are supposed to be used. I always
Yeah.
tell people that. I'm like, emergency funds are meant to be spent on emergencies. They're not just supposed to be kept there just for fun. And like growing interest at 4% is great. And even then, like we're gonna see, I think recently the Fed just decreased interest rates again, but
Mm-hmm.
it's probably going to be the last one for a while because they're trying to figure out what's going to happen in 2025 with
Yeah.
all of these shifts. So we might see even high yield savings account. Even then, it's still like it's going to be like around 4% or high
Mm-hmm.
3%. But regardless, I'm like, that's good, yes. But this money that you have in your emergency fund is supposed to be a rotating fund, meaning lo
Yeah.
usas, ahorras, lo usas, ahorras, lo usas, ahorras. And that's
Mm-hmm.
base one of financial security. This is just for like immediate need purposes, right? Like, si te cortan
Mm-hmm.
el trabajo, las horas, whatever, ahí tienes un fund para usarlo para los gastos de la casa, whatever, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's like step one, right? And then the next thing that I mentioned, even in the guide, I was like, okay, well, if by chance que no tenemos ahorros and we need to, like, let's say, consolidate our debt, well, in order to consolidate our debt, we have to have good credit in order to get a good
Mm-hmm.
interest rate on that loan, right? So working on our credit or reaching that 30% utilization rate on our debt is going to be key. Even if you don't pay off all your debt, just reaching that 30% because you're going to see a big shift in your credit score from going to like 70% of utilizing your credit limit to 30%. Like creditors
Yeah.
love the 30% number. No entiendo por qué, but they just love that number. And anything less that you have in your credit under 30%. So let's say you make it to 10% that you're using on your credit cards or 20%, even better, right?
Yeah.
And so I know that sometimes we can't be debt free because of the financial challenges that we face on a day to day basis of, paycheck to paycheck. But even then,
Mm-hmm.
tackling that high interest debt, because yes, interest rates are close to 30%. I always challenge people like, check on your credit cards. Go check how much you're paying on interest right now. Go
Mm-hmm.
see, and you're going to be shocked.
I think for me, it was definitely that's like, okay, ¿qué hago? Like in 2025 to make sure that I'm good over there. So like, I think I'm not sure because I had to determine if I still have dual citizenship because I was born over there, but I don't know if like when I joined the military me lo quitaron or no. So I gotta figure that out.
Yeah.
So that's one
Yeah.
of my steps. Definitely making sure that I'm boosting up my emergency fund. So like the typical one they used to say was like about 3 months or whatever. So I'm gonna
Mm.
probably push it to maybe 6 to 9 months because
Yeah.
you never know
Yeah.
what va a pasar with
Yeah.
everything, especially with
Yeah, because
the
it's a
whole
4 year
terrorist
term.
thing. Yeah,
Yeah, because it's like a 4 year term. It's not a year
yeah,
that he's in, it's 4 years. So
yeah.
like I said, that emergency fund is going to be rotating or growing because,
Yeah.
like, when we think about our financial plan, we need to have money liquid, right?
Hmm.
For these emergencies, and then we have to have money for growth, like for the next 4 years, for 5, 10 years, right from now, which is through investing, right? Whether you have real estate properties, whether you have investments in a brokerage account, right? Or your retirement account.
Yeah.
Because people are always thinking, okay, well, like, I'll use my emergency fund. Yeah. But
Hmm.
again, there's multiple levels of protection, right? And
Yeah.
about this because I know you have real estate properties, right? But like
Hmm.
worst case scenario, you can sell a real estate property and get your
Yeah.
ganancia, right?
Something that just recently happened that just popped in my head was with Party City, que they
Yes.
just like late like they're closing down. I was like, and who knows qué va a pasar now with the tariffs and stuff. Go, so planning. That's what I'm planning for. Que I might be out of a job for like 6 to 9 months. Que and I have to cover my costs and everything like that. So that's one of the planning things that I'm doing.
But the last part that's really the most important, which is financial protection through legal estate planning. So this is setting up your will. Most of the time, I think it's like 33% of people in the United States have a will, and there's like 70% of us who don't, which
Mm-hmm.
goes over what's going to happen with our funds if anything happens, right? What happens to our home, our like everything, our assets if something does happen to us by chance, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's one. And I usually think about this for our parents, not for us most of the time. And yes, it's important for us to have one, even just a
Mm-hmm.
simple one. But I think about my parents. Okay, what do you want to do with your assets when you pass?
Mm-hmm.
The next thing is considering a trust. Does it need to go into a trust to save on probate taxes? And when it
Mm-hmm.
goes, because most of the time when someone in our family passes, if we don't have a will or trust or anything, like anything listed, it goes to the courts, the government to decide what
Yeah.
happens next. And that's where we lose money on probate, taxes, and everything like that. So that's like one of the key principles. And there's templates online. There's I think it's called estateandtrust.com where you can get one for $200, a will to start
Mm-hmm.
out with, or start out with a trust for a few $100s for your family. And that's, like I said, that's what I'm going to go do when I go see my parents, is actually set up the
Mm-hmm.
will, figure out what trust we need for each property or whatever assets they have. And then one thing that I've been telling people the most out of everything that I mentioned in the guide is having a financial power of attorney. Because
Mm-hmm.
if you were not in the US, let's say you go to Mexico, let's say you go to El Salvador just to, for the time being to protect yourself, or let's say we get deported by chance.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Having a financial power of attorney to make financial moves if you didn't happen to make them in time is going to be essential. So someone that you trust very well that can move your assets, that can do things on your behalf, whether it's a child that you have that's a citizen, or a close business partner, friend, legally, that they can help, move funds on your behalf to protect yourself when you are not here. Because the one of
Mm-hmm.
the biggest questions I get from like even the documented community is qué pasa con mi dinero si no estoy?
Mm-hmm.
Do I lose all my money? Well, no, your money is still your money. No one's gonna
Yeah,
take
it's
it. It's
still
just a
there.
matter of, can you transfer it out where you are. And most
Mm-hmm.
of the time, if it's big lump sums of money, you might need a power of attorney since you're not there to uh, get that money out on your behalf and make those transfers.
Yeah.
And so if you don't have the app that can do it on its own, then most of the time, like I said, having a financial power of attorney is probably going to be one of the key legal documents to set up just in case. Okay.
Yeah.
It's just saying this person can do these business moves, or, if you need to sell your business, if by chance you get deported or anything along those lines. And I don't hate assuming that this might happen, but it's a possibility, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I have to go with my parents and set all these up. Who's the financial power of attorney? Who's going to be their healthcare directive, right? If they get
Yeah.
sick, because my parents are older and they have diabetes. So if they get sick, who can make those financial decisions or even their healthcare decisions? If it's not my mom, who is it going to be next? Maybe it's me, maybe it's somebody else, right?
Yeah.
So there's a lot of things from a like estate planning perspective that most of us never get to. like the
Yeah.
will, the trust, the power of attorney, or even life insurance, right? People usually see life insurance as a scam because most of the time
Mm-hmm.
they tend to scam you out and on policies. But when you know what life insurance is best for you, right away by doing your research, because I always say that do your research before you go meet with somebody for them to tell you what you need to do.
Yeah.
Um, life insurance is going to be there to protect you for any death and paying for your funeral, paying for the burial costs and just like family debt or expenses that might come up, right? And
Mhm.
there's different type of policies, but like these are things that we need to talk about. This the
Yeah.
ending part of the protection, which is the legal aspect, is what we don't do. I can count on like the amount like of fingers of my hand of people that I've worked with as clients that actually have some sort of like estate plan. Like it's less
Yeah.
than like 10. Like I promise you, I don't know many that actually
Yeah.
have an estate plan set in place. And if they do, it's because they have some sort of close family relative that has had wealth before, or they have a
Yeah.
really close colleague that has money that said, this is what you need to do. Right. And
Yeah.
so it's time for us to wake up and educate ourselves and start taking pasito a pasito. Y sí, cuesta dinero. It's not something cheap, but
Mm-hmm.
if we're willing to spend money en las carne asadas, en los gifts de Navidad, might as
Mm-hmm.
well gift ourselves some legal protection of what we do own.
That is true. A lot of stuff that because I'm on the same boat with my parents. They're about to, um, getting closer. Well, my dad's already like 65, so yeah. So,
Mhm.
uh, luckily he's tried to take a few steps, so I'm not starting like from complete scratch and stuff. I just gotta switch his a few things like his life insurance. He got like one that was just in case for if he got in an accident, like car accident, and that's it. That's all that it covered. So I'm like, well, okay, I get it, but I'm not too familiar
But
about
that's only
life insurance as
partial.
well.
Like,
Yeah, I was like, well, okay, I see what you were trying to do, Dad, but which is not, uh, it's not like too bad because I mean Texas is one of like the deadliest states with car accidents, so I get it definitely. But so I gotta help him with that estate plan, which is one of the reasons that like I'm having them move to San Antonio with me. So that way I could be like I see
mhm,
checking up
mhm.
on them. And a lot of stuff with their will and my stuff too, especially now that I'm
And you
acquiring
have
like
all these properties
yeah,
too.
now I'm like, oh my God, I gotta like start figuring out what to do. And
Yeah.
so that's the plan for me in 2025 is start protecting it as well and stuff like that. So I'm excited to get your guide for sure. Like we
Yeah,
go there
yeah. And I
step
had a
by
master
step.
class. Yeah, like I
Oh,
just
do
did a
you?
class and
Yeah.
yeah, I'm gonna attach it to the guide now
Okay.
because I did film the master class. So now I have the class plus the guide. It's
Okay.
$25. I didn't want to make it anything pricey because I know that this is important for our community.
Mm-hmm.
And like even the guide, it's like 60 plus pages long because I really spent the time of thinking of like anything that people might have questions on, like how we spend our money, value-based
Yeah.
systems, banking too. Bank instead of banking with like Wells Fargo and Bank of America, switch to a
Yeah.
credit union or a online bank where your values might align better versus a company that's been like sued multiple times for,
Oh God, yeah,
screwing
I can't
over
say.
their clients. So, like I said, like
Yeah.
there's a lot when it comes to money, pero pasito a pasito.
Mm-hmm.
I think taking the first year of 2025, like using this year to really get our ducks in a row. And again, it's not going to happen overnight. It's going
Yeah.
to take a few months, a lot of discussions, whether you're doing it for yourself or for your parents. It's going to take some time. But like I said, he's a president for 4 years. So the
Mm-hmm.
first year is where we're going to see a lot of volatility. We're going to see a lot of change. I don't know if the stock market's going to perform the same that like it has the last few years because again the
Yeah.
market reacts to the media, it reacts to how companies are moving, it reacts to politics. So I don't know if it's going to
Mm-hmm.
be a good year again next year than what we've had in the
Yeah.
past, but even when we think about investing, we're not investing for tomorrow, we're investing for a long time, we're investing for retirement, we're investing for the next plus 5 years, not for a year from now. Okay, so If you
Yeah.
need your money anytime sooner than like less than 3 years, I would probably adjust your portfolio and de-risk
Mm-hmm.
yourself and put it into more cash or bonds if that's what your plan is. And again,
Yeah.
these are some things that again, we don't have these conversations, and that's going to be my big focus for 2025 is just like the complex little things like this, because we always have this perception that everything's going to be great, the economy's great, we're going to be
Mm-hmm.
growing, the stock market's great, we're making money, yeah, yeah, yeah. Eh, but there's also times of uncertainty, and that's normal. That's what
Yeah.
happens. But that's why we have emergency funds. That's why we have all of these things that we need to set up in our financial plan for any uncertainty. So I hope that like this conversation inspires, your listeners to just take some action, like pasito a pasito, whether it's for your own
Mm-hmm.
family or for your parents. Start sitting down and having these conversations of what that looks like for them, what their future looks like, because a lot of us are like on our toes right now, trying to figure out
Mm-hmm.
what's next.
Link down below and all your information because again, it's very important. I'm gonna be pushing that
Yeah.
all year because it's a very important when I saw like you talking about it, like, oh man, this is perfect. Well, exactly what we need for 2025. Like so I'm glad that you created that guide and hopefully, go out there and get it. But
Yeah.
yeah, thank you for coming on here and having this very important conversation.
No, well, thank you, Violeta, for having me. And like I think we're hinted to listen and apply. This is a win, right?
Hmm.
Pasito a pasito, cada día vamos a aprender un poquito más. Knowledge
Hmm.
is power, and that's what we learned in 2024, right? That
Yeah.
clearly we don't have a lot of knowledge in some things. And so it's time for us
Hmm.
to pick up a few books, listen to some podcasts like this one,
Yeah.
and get started on our financial journey. And it's not a race. There's no one that we're competing with. There's no one that's better
Hmm.
than us. It's us against us. And so if anyone has any questions, y'all know where to find me. But
Hmm.
I'm a strong believer that if we have a GDP of like what, $3.2 trillion
Hmm.
in the United States, and that we could be like one of the fifth largest country in the world if Latinos in the US were like a
Yeah.
country. Okay, we can get our money in order. We're good
Yeah.
spenders,
Facts.
like might as well start, using that power, economic power for our own personal economy.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Well, thank you again for being here. Again, her information will be down below, and I'll see everyone in the next episode. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you so much for listening. Don't forget to like and share this episode so others can also find this podcast. Don't forget to follow me on all my social medias listed in the show notes below, where you can also find resources to help you in your financial journey. If you're interested in becoming a guest on the podcast, you can find that information in the show notes. Other than that, thank you so much for your support, and I will see you in the next episode. Bye.